Good morning, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I am Congresswoman Nikema Williams, and y'all, I proudly serve the people of Georgia's 5th Congressional District. Thank you to everyone for being here, especially my fellow Congresswomen fighting with me to bring relief to the 44.7 million Americans burdened by student debt. And thank you to Alpha Taylor with the National Consumer Law Center, who works to bring justice for many of those same Americans. Y'all, we're here today because on May 1st, millions of Americans will see a hit to their wallets when student loan payments resume after a 2-year suspension. All of the Congresswomen joining me know that we have to extend a financial lifeline to the tens of millions of students debt burdened in our country. I know how those Americans feel because I'm one of them. I'm still paying off those student loans well after my undergraduate days. Getting student loan debt relief is a matter of racial justice as well. Black borrowers hold an outsized proportion of student loan debt. In fact, 4 years after graduation, Black graduates have on average $52,776 in student loan debt, nearly twice as much as the typical white graduate. When looking at those numbers, my question is, how can you get ahead if you can never truly get your feet under you? I'm here to be the voice of my constituents, including Natalie, who lives in the Morningside community, Jacob from Atlanta, and everyone else in Georgia's 5th Congressional District who emails, calls, texts, and DMs me to say that they are desperate for a financial lifeline and they only see heartache in their futures, all thanks to student loan debt. I refuse to sit idly by while people are about to suffer. That's why I joined these Congresswomen to introduce our Clean Slate legislative series. These 3 bills help borrowers truly get a second chance after doing the hard work to get their finances in order from crippling student loan debt. My bill in this series, the Student Loan Rehabilitation and Credit Score Improvement Act, was introduced in January. This bill will remove all negative credit reporting from a defaulted student loan once the borrower has completed the student loan rehabilitation program. And I know how hard this can be because y'all, unfortunately, I've been there after falling behind on my student loan payments. That history can impact people's ability to get a job, rent an apartment, or buy a house. So after I introduced the Student Loan Rehabilitation and Credit Score Improvement Act, I heard from a constituent, y'all, Camila, who told me after she was fired without cause, she agreed to a payment plan with a loan servicer. But due to a paperwork blunder on the servicer's end, her loan was reported as delinquent, and that was reflected on her credit score. Y'all, Camila had to sell her house to pay her bills because she couldn't refinance due to her credit score. Camila is now doing better financially, but she told me that this bill would have gone a long way to ending what she called a nightmare. This should never happen, and while I'm going to continue to push to cancel student loan debt and do something about the rising cost of college tuition, I'm finding solutions to bring student loan debt relief now. Generations of people in America have grown up knowing the need for a college education. Sadly, student loan debt has made the promise of America unobtainable for so many. But my bill, the Student Loan Rehabilitation and Credit Score Improvement Act, as well as the entire Clean Slate series, would once again bring the promise of America within reach for everyone, no matter their zip code, no matter their bank account. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Congresswoman Alma Adams. Both she and Congresswoman Haley Stevens have an Education and Labor Committee markup to attend. So y'all, they're not leaving us because they don't want to be with us, but they are going to committee to continue to advocate on behalf of student loan borrowers. Congresswoman Adams.
Thank you, my sister. Good afternoon. Of all of the civil rights for which the world has struggled and fought for 500 years, the right to learn is undoubtedly the most fundamental. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Congresswoman Williams, for your introduction and for bringing us together today. And thank you to my colleagues, Deborah Ross and Haley Stevens, for being here as our co-leads on this transformative bill, on these transformative bills to address the student debt crisis. I'm Congresswoman Alma Adams, and as a proud double Aggie from North Carolina, A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina, a proud Buckeye with a doctorate from The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, and as a caring professor who taught at Bennett College, the Bennett Bells, for 40 years. Higher education, from our institutions to the students they serve, will always be a priority for me. And from that experience, I can tell you this with certainty. The debt is too damn high. You know, student debt is crippling generations of Americans. Countless predatory practices have taken one of the most transformative human experiences, going to college and getting an education, and have made it a burden. Instead of making higher education a place to develop the mind, the body, and soul, we've turned college and university into another barrier that keeps families out of the middle class. And that's why relief for our students can't wait, and that's why I am proud to stand with my colleagues to talk about 3 bills, the Clean Slate series for student debt relief. These 3 bills, the Student Loan Rehabilitation and Credit Score Improvement Act, the Clean Slate through Repayment Act, and the Clean Slate through Consolidation Act. These pieces of legislation help remove defaults from the credit reports of borrowers and improve their credit scores. Any Gen Xer, millennial, or recent college graduate knows how important that credit score can be when it comes to buying a car, opening a small business, obtaining a loan or line of credit, or applying for a mortgage. These pieces of legislation provide a true second chance and an opportunity to ease the burden of student loan debt for generations of Americans. I'm proud to lead the Clean Slate series for student debt relief with these talented Congresswomen, and it is now my pleasure, my distinct honor, to turn the mic over to my friend, the Congresswoman from Michigan's 11th District, Haley Stevens.
Well, what an honor to be with my chairwoman, Congresswoman Alma Adams, who I join in saying that the debt is too damn high in America for our students. And what a treat and a spoiled privilege to be with Congresswoman Williams and Congresswoman Ross as we introduce this sweeping set of legislation to consolidate student loan debt. Look, the reality is for recent graduates in Michigan and for working professionals, they are struggling with astronomical student debt that they have to pay off. And my bill, the Clean Slate through Consolidation Act, will remove those default records from the credit history of federal student loan borrowers who have consolidated their loans. We are seeing ourselves making our way through a pandemic. Interest rates have been paused, payments have been paused. We've got to tackle the astronomical and rising costs of education, higher education in America, but we have got to do something now. And this absolutely is an equity issue challenging Black Americans across this country. So the Clean Slate bills have received overwhelming support from groups ranging from the Center for Responsible Lending to the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators to the American Federation of Teachers. And this support shows the overwhelming support that these bills have, the urgency to pass now. We've got to act now. The next generation can't wait, and the current generations who are experiencing, the tens of thousands of dollars that are hampering the ability to buy a home, to even have a wedding, to even purchasing a car. And we can act in the United States Congress to remove some of the deal that has been hampering credit histories for working Americans. So let's stand up. Let's do the right thing for students. Let's do the right thing for working professionals. Let's build a more equitable society so that we can achieve that American dream. You go and get a degree of higher education. That shouldn't be something that holds you back. It should be pathways to succeed in American society. And so this is a good group today. And yes, I'm the Congresswoman from Michigan's 11th District. And we've got the Congresswoman from North Carolina, the Congresswoman from Georgia, and now I'm going to bring up another Congresswoman from North Carolina, Congresswoman Deb Ross, to share her piece of this. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and thank you for being here. This is such an important issue. It is one of the most important issues for the next generation. And you know, we've gone through this COVID pandemic, we've put pauses on different things, but what we haven't put a pause on is the next generation's future. And the burden of crippling student loan debt, with higher interest rates, with not enough affordable housing, all of these things are coming together as a perfect storm for the next generation. I echo what my esteemed colleagues have said, and it is a privilege to work with these incredible congresswomen, including the soon-to-be dean of my delegation, Congresswoman Alma Adams, who also chairs the HBCU caucus. We can make a difference in the lives of Americans across our districts and across the country. We're in a country that prides itself on institutions of higher education, not just for basketball, but also for learning and for our future, and the opportunities that they afford people from all different backgrounds and all different communities. Yet too many who attend our colleges and universities are burdened with crippling student loans and the adverse credit history that often comes with them. And this prevents the next generation from reaching the American dream. In our home state of North Carolina, we're known for incredible schools, both public and private. People travel from all over the country and all over the world to attend them, but the costs and the burdens many of these students face are too damn high. The bottom line is this: students should not be punished simply for seeking an education. And we are approaching the day when student loan collections will resume following the pause triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's more important than ever that our student borrowers are supported and that Congress acts. Our clean slate bills will remove some of the greatest barriers students face to their pursuit of the American dream, and we want to ensure that these Americans can reach all of their goals, whether it's buying a home, owning a car, starting a business, I like that wedding, paying for their wedding, or saving for the future. Our Student Loan Rehabilitation and Credit Score Improvement Act will help give borrowers a second chance by removing adverse credit history once they complete loan rehabilitation. My Clean Slate Through Repayment Act will ensure Americans who repay their loans do not feel the negative impacts of student debt for years to come. And finally, our Clean Slate Through Consolidation Act will give borrowers who consolidate a defaulted loan a chance to reestablish their credit and get back on track. As Congresswoman Williams said, 47.9 million Americans are impacted by student debt, and now is the time to get these bills across the finish line. I want to thank you very much for being here and turn the mic back over to our colleague, Congresswoman Williams.
Thank you, Congresswoman Ross, and once again, thank you to my other colleagues for joining me today. Y'all, I like to call them my co-conspirators for justice, because that's exactly what we're doing here in the People's House. Next, I'd like to bring to the podium Alpha Taylor, an attorney with the National Consumer Law Center. We appreciate the National Consumer Law Center's support of the Clean Slate legislative series and everything that you continue to do to protect student borrowers.
Thank you, Congresswoman Williams. Good morning, and thanks for having me here today. I'm Alpha Taylor. I'm an attorney with the National Consumer Law Center, and I'm speaking here today on behalf of our low-income clients. There are millions of borrowers in default on federal student loans. Now, these borrowers are disproportionately borrowers of color, with Black women carrying the heaviest burden of our nation's student debt crisis. On average, Black women have the highest student debt for both undergraduate and graduate schools. Now, even with more education, Black women still make significantly less and they struggle with repaying their student debt. Now, these borrowers are heads of household with children, and they are struggling to bounce back from the global pandemic that has disproportionately harmed communities of colors. For these borrowers, the price is too damn high, but also the burden of student debt is simply too heavy to carry. The consequences of student loan default are too severe for these borrowers. Now, before the payment pause, borrowers face wage garnishment and seizure of critical federal benefits, including the Earned Income Tax Credit, the Child Tax Credit, and Social Security. Now, for those borrowers we were able to get out of default, their harm continued as the negative impact of student loan default followed them for years, even though they made a good faith effort to make good on their student loan debt. That history of default limited their economic mobility, making it difficult to access credit to purchase home or make other necessary life purchases. The Clean Slate bills ensures that a negative credit reporting relating to federal student loan defaults will not continue to limit the economic options for borrowers who have successfully exited default. Now, as we recover from the pandemic, we must rethink the punitive nature of student loan default and take actions to implement policies that will make it easier for borrowers to exit default and gain access to student loan relief programs like income-driven repayment plans. The Clean Slate bills will ensure that once a borrower has gotten back into good standing on their student loans, they will be able to put that history of default behind them and move forward with their lives economically. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alpha, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And if there are any questions, we will take them now. Alpha, you might want to come back up. Yes. Hometown station. So what we've seen is there's opposition to everything that is introduced this legislative cycle. My job here is to represent the people of Georgia's 5th Congressional District, and regardless of what the other side is willing to do, I'm willing to continue to do the work to represent the people in my district who suffer every day from student debt relief. And so I am going to continue to push forward with this. I have a record of working in a bipartisan nature when people are willing to step up and do what is right, fair, and just for their constituents. Just last week, I had a child care bill on the floor that was bipartisan. And so if there are people who are willing to stand up for their constituents, who are dealing with the same student debt crisis that my constituents are dealing with, I welcome them to join me in this process. But what I know is that we can't continue to wait and do nothing.
And I have something to add to that. If you I think it's very important that our colleagues on the other side of the aisle take some responsibility for the fact that student debt is so high, particularly with so many of the debacles with private for-profit colleges and the debt that people have incurred, and Congress has had to step in and resolve many of those issues. And so if you break it, you have to fix it.
And I'll just add that, I mean, we got to look at the borrowers that are being impacted, those borrowers that are being hammered. These are low-income borrowers. These are borrowers of colors who are feeling the disproportionate burden of the student debt crisis. Now, borrowers shouldn't have to make life and death decisions because of student loan debt. So definitely we need a solution to help borrowers who are in default, but also help borrowers once they exit default so that they can, that burden can no longer carry on throughout their lives. Because, I mean, if you look at African-American borrowers, there is a racial wealth gap. We're talking about the inability to afford homes. Student loan debt impacts your debt-to-income ratio. And when you look at the history of this nation, you talk about redlining, it makes it difficult for black borrowers, especially black women, who have to get more education because that is the only opportunity, that's the only one America is going to open the door for some of them. So they have to work harder. They have to get more education to get the credentials to provide for their family, and that comes with a cost. So the student debt crisis is extremely difficult on communities of color, on low-income people. I mean, it's not justifiable, and we should work together to definitely address this crisis.
Atlanta, unfortunately, leads the nation in the racial wealth gap, and we just had a report out last week by the Federal Reserve Bank about the inaffordability of housing in Atlanta and how so many people are being priced out of our economy to just get a mortgage. And so that's why I'm not willing to stand by and not do anything during this debt crisis. Tia? So there are a number of solutions to the student debt crisis. And so I welcome more conversations with the White House as we move forward. But what I know that I can do as a legislator is introduce legislation to keep things moving. And that is why we've introduced this Clean Slate series. But I welcome continued conversations with advocates, with the White House, because there is no one-size-fits-all solution to this. And so we have to all continue working together.
And do not underestimate the impact of the pause that the White House has put on student loan repayment. Not only has that allowed people to get through the pandemic, but it has allowed them some time to do the kinds of loan consolidation that we're talking about, to look at their credit, and to take stock of where they're going to go afterwards. So that was a big thing, and if they want to do more, we welcome it.
It's on you.
Okay, so, I mean, thank you, Congresswoman, for bringing up the benefit of the payment pause. It has been really a relief for borrowers, but there are other systematic problems with the student loan system that needs to be fixed before we turn on the system. The system was broken before the pandemic.
Yes.
The system is broken during the pandemic, and if the administration don't take steps to address these systematic problems with the student loan system, we're going to keep seeing the same problems. You know, we have relief for PLSLF borrowers, but there are also borrower income-driven repayment plan. That program also needs reform. So we need to fix the system before you turn it on. I tell people, fix it first before you turn it on, if you do turn it on at all. Thank you.
And I have one other thing to add. Please remind your viewers and your readers about how much the American Rescue Plan did for so many students who are in school right now, in particular for HBCUs. And please remind your readers about the increase in Pell Grants in the omnibus and what this administration has proposed for further increases in the 2023 budget.
Right here. So I represent the Georgia's 5th Congressional District, which includes the entire city of Atlanta. We have the largest consortium of HBCUs of any congressional district in the country. I'm a third-generation HBCU alum of Talladega College in Talladega, Alabama. Got to give a shout out to my HBCU. And what I know is that I have experienced this myself, and even as a sitting member of Congress, my payments are gonna restart. I took the time off during the pandemic that was granted to me as everyone else, and my payments will restart on May 1st. And I'm talking to people all across my district. I get the phone calls, the text message, the DMs telling me they don't know what they're gonna do when student loan payments restart. And so that's why I came together to work on this, because I know that if I'm going to address the racial wealth gap in this country, that Atlanta unfortunately leads in throughout the entire country, that student loan debt is something that we have to absolutely address, because the disproportionate impact that it has on Black borrowers and the disproportionate amount of the student loan debt in this country that is held by Black borrowers. I don't have the exact number, but maybe Alpha has an exact number.
All right, ballpark, I think black women owe about 20% more And in generally, black borrowers also owe, coming out of college, I think they owe about twice more than their white counterparts. So like, I mean, the number, the disparity, you know, is too large. And when we are talking about relief, that's why I keep saying, let's think about those people who cannot carry the burden. Some of these borrowers attended colleges that defrauded them. Some of them did not graduate, did not get the degree, but yet they are still paying debt that they cannot benefit from. So definitely there's an issue that impacts community of color. There's an issue that impacts women borrowers. There's an issue that impacts America, and we need to address this crisis.
And I just have a source for you. The St. Louis Fed does some of the best research on the impact of student loan debt of communities of color, what it does to intergenerational wealth, and what it does for home buying. So, I mean, I would just go out. First of all, you should be reading the St. Louis Fed anyway, because I think they're the most progressive Fed that we have. But anyway, you should go out there. I think they'll have a lot of the data you're looking for.
Last question. I'm sorry.
About a clarification on who this can help. So I know that we're talking about federal student loan borrowers. Does it also apply to people who had any private student loans, whether they needed that to supplement, you know, maybe the federal loans didn't cover everything, or is that out of the purview of Congress when we start to get?
This is for federal student loan borrowers who have been interfaced with the federal government on their student loans and have somehow fallen behind on their student loan payments, have gone into default, have done their part, rehabilitated, but yet it still impacts their credit score because we don't take the defaults off of credit scores once they've done their part to get them back into a current status. And that's what this will do, give you a clean slate, just like the series says. This is the Clean Slate series, and we're here standing for the students who are still trying to get ahead in this country and live the promise of America. Thank you.